Chapter 28. Returning to Nazareth. 2. As the boy walked in through the door, he asked, "Are you leaving now?" "Yes, it seems so. A few days ago, I had a dream that told me to return to Israel. I wish we could spend more time together." Joseph and Mary smiled warmly at the boy who expressed his regret. After leaving Bethlehem and arriving in Egypt, the three of them, Joseph, Mary, and their child, found shelter at the home of the boy and his father in Alexandria. They managed their expenses by selling the gifts from the Magi. Still, as Jews, they wished to live where they could maintain their traditions, so they naturally settled among other Jewish communities. Although there were Jewish settlements elsewhere, Alexandria stood out for its large Jewish population. 1 in every 3 people was likely Jewish. Since the Ptolemaic dynasty, Alexandria had fostered a strong Jewish community with its own autonomous government. Yet, local attitudes toward Jews were not always welcoming. Their strict observance of the Sabbath and many customs sometimes led to friction. Furthermore, their sense of being God's chosen people and their success in business often made it difficult for other groups to view them favorably, resulting in tension wherever they lived. To address such issues, Julius Caesar, Antony, and Augustus issued decrees allowing Jews to maintain their religious traditions and exempting them from military service. While many appreciated these privileges, some remained dissatisfied, forgetting how their ancestors had grumbled in the wilderness and faced God's judgment as a result. Fortunately, the boy and his father were not among those who complained. The boy grew up in the Jewish community, but developed a broad-minded perspective through friendships with Gentiles and books he read at the library. His father, though he was deeply aware of the Jewish belief in being the chosen people, was not rigidly legalistic. The fact that he had considered leaving Bethlehem for survival showed he was not stubbornly set in his ways. The door opened again. This time, it was the boy's father. "Joseph, do you really have to leave now? When God commands us to go, we must obey. The situation in Judea is dangerous. If you leave now, I can't guarantee your safety. It's risky enough for you alone. How can you take Mary and the child with you?" His eyes were filled with concern. When Joseph, Mary, and their baby first arrived in Alexandria, the boy's father had not welcomed them warmly. He already had many mouths to feed, and 3 more guests felt like a burden. He also resented their seemingly comfortable life at the shepherd's house. Even if the baby was the Messiah, their reliance on others reminded him of those who took advantage of their status. But his prejudice soon faded. Joseph worked hard, followed God's laws, and helped others without seeking recognition. If there were an award for being a true Jew, Joseph would have deserved it. Where had such a man come from? Most people he met in Egypt were self-centered. Wealthy, self-made men were one thing, but Pharisees and Levites from priestly families were even worse, arrogantly claiming they alone truly believed in God. Because his work required frequent contact with Gentiles, they often interfered and judged him. He could tolerate some of this, but their hypocrisy, especially when buying grain, was hard to ignore. They were often more ruthless than foreigners. Their greed and manipulation made him dislike those who used God's law to oppress, while pursuing their own gain. Initially, he had lumped Joseph and Mary in with such people. But seeing their genuine character changed his mind completely. Mary was equally remarkable, mature beyond her years. Though she sometimes corrected Joseph as any wife might, her criticisms were usually fair. Listening to her calmly explain her reasoning was often persuasive. What impressed him most was her willingness to admit her mistakes, something rare among people of her time. If she realized someone else's opinion was right, She accepted it graciously and adjusted her stance with courage. Mary also had a gentle way of influencing others. If she wanted something done, she would mention it to the right person. If they hesitated, she would ask another, who would then urge the first to act. Sooner or later, the task was accomplished. If he had known they were such people, he would have recognized them as the Messiah's parents long ago. He had once told his son they should care for the newborn, as he might be the Messiah, but honestly, he mostly wanted to avoid disappointment. It would be wonderful if the true Messiah had come, but what if he hadn't? He'd heard many stories of people claiming to be the Messiah, only to disappoint. Even in Alexandria, those who boasted of holiness often had the most flaws, using their power to deceive and exploit. In the end, they gained wealth and honor at the expense of others. So how could he accept the Messiah's arrival so easily? When he first heard the story, he thought, now even these people are trying to sell the Messiah. But these people were different. Joseph and Mary lived simply and humbly, not boasting about being the Messiah's parents. Joseph worked hard, and Mary devoted herself to the household. Their values and actions were upright. They never acted superior, but always strove to be righteous before God. Each day they reflected on their actions, repented when necessary, and tried to change. What stood out most was their attitude toward failure. When someone failed, they didn't scold or correct them immediately. Instead, they acknowledged that failure wasn't inherently bad and encouraged others to learn from it, suggesting that perhaps God had allowed it for a reason. They offered loving advice and encouraged others to try again with a new mindset. Even after repeated failures, they never resorted to anger, but reassured others that it was okay to try again. Because of this, something remarkable happened. His son changed. The boy had been timid and withdrawn since childhood. His father's scolding only made things worse. He had tried teaching him different things, but nothing worked. The boy preferred to hide away in the library. Despite coming to this distant land for his children's sake, every time he saw his son fail to meet expectations, he felt a burning frustration. Sometimes he tried to be kind, thinking his son's nature might be his own fault, but he couldn't solve the problem. But as his son spent time with Joseph and Mary, he changed dramatically. They accepted him as he was, never rushing or criticizing him for his shyness. Instead, they waited patiently, praising and encouraging him. Thanks to them, his son gradually opened up and eventually stopped stuttering, even in front of his father. Through their warmth and encouragement, his son was transformed. If the Messiah learned from such parents, he would become a king worthy of devotion, a king full of love and patience. That's why the thought of letting them return to dangerous Israel was unbearable. He had to find a way to stop them. Please reconsider. The news I've heard is serious. Is something happening in Judea? Mary asked. Listen carefully. This information comes from reliable merchants. It started with the death of 3,000 Jews at the hands of Archelaus during Passover. Afterward, Archelaus went to Rome to seek recognition as king, and uprisings broke out across Judea. Varus, the governor of Syria, suppressed them, leaving one legion under his subordinate Sabinus in Jerusalem. But that only made things worse. Joseph, Mary, and his son listened intently. They must have been shocked, but the real danger was yet to come. Sabinus is greedy. He tried to seize the king's property by force, oppressing the people until they finally rebelled. During Pentecost, crowds gathered in Jerusalem and fought the Roman army. It wasn't just Jews. Idumeans, Galileans, and people from east of the Jordan joined in. The Romans suffered heavy losses as people attacked from the temple colonnades. Eventually, the Romans set fire to the wooden colonnades, killing many. Sabinus then looted the temple treasury, stealing 400 talents of sacred money. What? No one is allowed to touch the temple treasury. Exactly. People became even more enraged and surrounded the palace. Sabinus must have been terrified. He hasn't shown his face since. That's Jerusalem. Other regions are even worse. Is Galilee dangerous too? What about Nazareth? Mary's voice trembled. Nazareth is so small that I haven't heard anything specific. But nearby, in Galilee, a man named Judah ben Hezekiah attacked Sepphoris, seized weapons, and killed many. What should we do? I have a friend in Sepphoris. Joseph squeezed Mary's trembling hand, his own face tense. It's not just Galilee. In Jericho, a former servant of Herod named Simon declared himself king and started a rebellion. Several of Herod's relatives have also proclaimed themselves kings and started uprisings. Even a shepherd named Athronges has declared himself king and is leading attacks against Herod's soldiers, Romans, and even ordinary citizens. Joseph, what about our family and friends? What about the shepherds' families in Bethlehem? Mary wept, leaning into Joseph's arms. Joseph comforted her, but his face was pale. The boy was silent with shock. The situation in Israel was dire. Even the boy's father had felt chills when he first heard the news. Joseph, even after all this, are you still planning to go? Joseph looked at his wife Mary, then at the boy, then at the boy's father, and finally at the sleeping baby for a long time. After a while he spoke. I truly appreciate your concern, but I believe there's a reason God is commanding us to return now. Our family lives in Nazareth, a small village filled with good people. When we left, we never imagined we'd be gone so long. The decree from Quirinius, Rome's envoy to Syria, separated our family like this. Yet through this hardship, God's plan has been fulfilled. The Messiah's birth, the boy said quietly. Joseph smiled at him before continuing. The prophecy of Micah, that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem, was fulfilled through these events. We received an unexpected visit from the Magi and have come all the way to Egypt, much like our ancestors who left Canaan for Egypt. Now God commands us to return. When Moses led the Israelites back to Israel, do you think they had no worries? They faced powerful enemies and countless dangers, but they went because it was God's will. Joseph's gaze grew intense. Just as God protected the Israelites in the wilderness, he will protect us now, just as he always has. Joseph, even if you return, you'll face many hardships. I know, but if God calls us back in such difficult times, there must be a purpose, something we need to experience or accomplish there. All right then. If you're so determined, I won't stop you. But don't go into Judea where Archelaus will be king. That region is in the worst turmoil. Instead, travel through Samaria back to Galilee. There are no uprisings in Samaria, so it should be safer. Yes, we'll consider that as we travel. I trust God will guide us again, even through dreams. All right, I'll pray for your safety. And travel slowly if you can. Governor Varus is said to be marching south with reinforcements. When he arrives, anyone involved in the uprisings will be destroyed. Judah and Sepphoris and the others will be crushed. The Romans will burn everything in their path. Yes, thank you for everything. Joseph and Mary bid a heartfelt farewell to the family who had welcomed them and set off for Israel. Would they ever meet again? The turmoil in Judea and Galilee made it impossible to know. The boy and his father prayed that Jesus would survive this crisis and grow to be the world's true king. As the boy's father had mentioned, Varus, the Roman governor of Syria, brought 2 legions and reinforcements from neighboring kings, devastating Galilee and Judea. When Varus arrived in Jerusalem, besieged Jews claimed outsiders had fought the Romans, insisting on their innocence. Varus captured those involved, pardoning minor offenders but executing others. 2,000 were crucified. Herod's rebellious relatives were all executed. In the midst of such suffering, God brought Joseph, Mary, and his son back to Israel. God did not wish for them to live safely far from hardship. He wanted them among those who suffered most. In times of universal struggle, people of faith could not turn their backs on the world. When Israel suffered, God suffered with them. When people grieved, God grieved too. From the beginning, God's Son entered humanity's pain as a vulnerable child. When Joseph led his family into Israel, they heard news of executions and learned that Archelaus had become king over Judea. Overwhelmed, Joseph prayed to God and was guided in a dream to return to Nazareth. There, they lived among those who mourned. Just as a stump remains when an oak or terebinth is cut down, so the holy seed remained in that land. Jesus became the holy seed that would grow anew where everything seemed destroyed. Thus was fulfilled the prophecy. He will be called a Nazarene. The boy spoke up. Father. Yes, son? When I grow up, I want to tell people about what I've experienced, that I met the Messiah and his parents, that they never turned away from others' pain and sorrow, and that this Messiah will understand our wounds more deeply than anyone else. What if people don't believe you? I'll keep telling the story until someone listens. Who knows? Maybe someone who hears it will one day meet the grown Messiah and do something small for him, even if it's just carrying wood for him. Carrying wood? Why would anyone do that? Well, Joseph is a carpenter, isn't he? Maybe one day the Messiah will help his father with his work by carrying wood, and someone might lend him a hand. The boy's father gently stroked his son's head. You're right, and when that time comes, don't do it alone. Let me join you, so today's memories will last forever. Hot tears streamed down the boy's face.